Good evening. I'd like to call Property Management Committee in order. First order of business, approval of minutes. Do I have a motion to that effect?
So approved.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. First order of business, master use concept plan for Florence Road, Single Road property. Okay, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All right, we've got several things tonight, some of which I'm going to ask you to make decisions, some of which I'm just bringing you up to date, that you'll have to decide later on specifics about what you want to do. All right, so Mr. Demasi and Mr. Nolan, come up here if you don't mind. All right, so if you guys would, this was too much to put out there, so if y'all would take one down there, it's Mr. Baum, y'all take one, Mr. Johnson, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see this.
That's fine.
We'll give you one, Mr. McAdoo, or you and David can sort of spread that out, maybe.
Okay, right here.
All right. Mr. Nolan, please roll that out there so we can share that one with you and Doug and myself. All right. Now, what we have here, people, you know, some of yeah, there's just one. I have multiple copies here. Anybody want to take one home with them and study this later? We certainly have. I think I have enough almost that to happen. Okay. You know, we purchased the property on the corner of Florence Road and Singer Road some time ago, and we've been iterating on developing this, what we're calling the concept master plan, and we've gone through a number of changes and modifications. Mr. Nolan's been involved, Mr. Demosi, and Mr. Hughes, our engineer, has been working on this. So over a period of several months, this is what we've sort of come up with, is what we think we could put out there and still have some room for additional growth at some point in the future. Now, if you look at the very corner of Singer Road and Florence Road, you see something labeled office. So we are in the left-hand corner, and then you've got, see something that says vehicle sheds. All right, all of that little corner right there is solid waste. That would be the solid waste headquarters, and those vehicle sheds would be a place for all these trucks that we have and vehicles to be sitting underneath out of the weather at a minimum. I don't think this is going to have signs on all of it, is it necessarily? Maybe.
It'd be three-sided.
Three-sided. From the road, from Florence Road, it's sided, then they'll be pulling in, you know, from the east going toward the west. All right. Now, just moving right next to that, you see but this vehicle shed and this office, that's sort of one of the first things we think we should do. The fuel depot, we've got a place for a fuel depot. And I think this needs more discovery and discussion by the commission and others before we decide if that's what we're going to actually do, all right? But at least it's there. We have a place for it if you choose to do this. We do not have a fuel depot now. And right now we have a contract with one fuel supplier that has 2 or 3 locations that we can send our vehicles, and we get a contract price off of that based on a fuel contract kind of process that's out there in the wholesale market, all right? Then if you look a little to the north of that fuel depot, you see something called vehicle shops. Phase 1, and then we've got more room for future vehicle shops, phase 2 and 3, if that chooses to go forward. The next thing we want to do, the second thing, is that first vehicle shop there where we've got labeled phase 1. And how many bays are we talking about there, Mr. Nolan?
The finished product would be 10 bays with the center section of it would be the office, the parts room, restroom, shower room, all that kind of stuff. So it'd be 5 bays on either side.
5 bays that you could enter from both sides of the
Right.
of the structure.
And the bays are intended to be 25 feet wide and 100 feet long.
Now, some of you have been down there and seen where we are. We're under the old armory, underneath EMS, you might say. And Mac's office is up on that first floor as well. There's barely room. There's expert drivers, and they can get 2 vehicles in there. And I don't know whether they can get 3 or not. They can get 4. But I don't know how they get 4. And maybe they got a mini car of some sort in there. But we've got, as you well know, very, very limited place to work on our vehicles. So, and we don't know if that might even, but we need this first phase, and we could take on more vehicles from some of the other entities. We're working on county general and ambulance vehicles, and we'd like to work on the fire department, and the sheriff at some point can decide if they want in on the deal later. But we've only got 3 people providing the ambulance maintenance and the rest of the county vehicles. Now they do work, they really can't work on Max because his vehicles are too large to get in there. So he's got a whole bunch of bigger trucks that we can't function there. We're just giving you an overview of this. At some point, somebody's gonna have to make hard decisions if we're gonna actually do in phase 1, those 2 buildings or otherwise. And we're gonna have to hire an architect and engineer to help us work through this. Okay, now, if you move a little bit to the right of Fuel Depot, you can see what we've got there. There's an existing house there. And behind that existing house, you can see they put an arrow that says ambulance station. But the existing house could be used for their sleeping quarters and their office, you might say. But the vehicles would be back in that place behind it. There would be room, probably a double-sided entryway and exitway, or we don't know. That's yet to be determined. The commission will have to decide when do you want to use that and when do we want another ambulance out in that location. We have not made that decision yet, all right? We're just telling you this is what we've got laid out so we can be in a position to do that if and when the commission decides it wants to do that. And then back at the back there, we've got something labeled the recycling center. We've got a place there to have a recycling center if the commission chooses to do it at some point in the future. The only thing that, the primary things that started all this discussion was solid waste and the vehicle maintenance area, and those are the 2 things we'd like to focus on. And you can see we've got other space here that possibly could be used for something else as time goes on. Now, all that being said, I guess we sort of like go ahead. Well, the Mac's moving us ahead a little bit here.
Well, you go ahead.
We can do everything I just said appropriately with what property we got. Now, if you look a little further to the right of where we've got the entryway going to that recycling center, you'll see where's our property line. Our property line is, see that it sort of zigzags around and comes up. The hard line, right, you see the 04001? That's right above the property line. You come to the corner and you go north, and then you turn back west and you zag there and go across there. It would be really, really nice, and this is something we should have already worked on a bit. We hadn't been able to get a hold of the owners of the property. You see this property that abuts against us toward the east of our property is owned by a propane corporate, I don't know what it's Heritage or what, I'm not sure what the name of it is. But anyway, they have a propane little area there where they can service from, and they've got tanks and stuff. If we could work out some reasonable swap, you can see we go down in that rectangle into their property. If we could give them part of that, and then they could give us this little corner up there to the left, it'd be almost an equal swap in property, and it would make both of our properties more workable to each of us. We wouldn't have that little jag and offset there. So we don't, I'm not asking for you to give us permission to do that yet. I don't have time to finish that little journey, but I'd like for you to know that that's something, those of you that are going to still be on the commission, that really we should focus on, and I'll pass that information on to the next leadership team here, and maybe they'll work on that. But so, Mac, and Doug, what have we not told them they need to sort of know regarding all this business here?
Mary Burge, I think you covered it.
Okay, but
What are you thinking about trading for this proposed property right here?
well, we would swap it. See, it'd be an equal swap.
Where's
No, this
this one little
Well,
spot
not
right
all
here?
of that, not all of that, Mr. Johnson.
That dotted line,
Yeah,
see, our property comes here,
right.
here, and
Okay.
here. So theirs is in here, so that dotted
See
line
that,
would be
see
the
that dotted line
swap.
would be the new property line. So they would get that little square where your left hand right there, and where your pencil is would be what they give us, that they currently own. See, it just straighten the business out there and to make our land more workable and practical, and theirs, I don't see that would hurt them, but we have to talk to them about that, okay?
Looks
In
like
fact,
it'd be
they-
beneficial to both people involved.
It's what we think, but we just haven't found out who is in control of that property yet. I'm not sure it's somewhere off from here
Yeah.
that we haven't tracked it down, quite honestly, okay? But that doesn't affect what we're proposing to do here right at this moment, but we could put us in a position, if you guys would just sort of give us, this wouldn't be a final ruling because we're gonna have to do, we've got a survey here, but we don't have a topo, you know, for elevations and stuff, because it would give us the ability, if you just sort of give us a go-ahead on the conceptual concept of this, then we could get the, we're gonna have to find an engineer of some sort or an architect to help give us just some preliminary thinking. We're gonna have to engage one to actually start doing this before we can decide if you wanna do it, and give us some preliminary projections on the cost of these two components that we're talking about putting in place here, so that we can decide then what the commission officially wants to do about putting pencil to paper and actually drawing plans and going through the process of getting bids, et cetera.
Well, Mac, you got it prioritized, what would be the steps that we need to take? How we need to get started on this?
The railroad track side and the Florence Road side is both city of Murfreesboro, in the city.
Right.
So this triangle is not in the city. The city of Murfreesboro sewer line comes across our property. For us to tie to it, they're probably gonna want us to be in the city and annex it in. So
What is it,
that's,
Smyrna?
Murfreesboro.
so that would give, because right now it's just kind of an odd shape on their city limits, so that would kind of balance that out a little bit. Originally, we were thinking about putting a recycling center on the corner of Florence and Sinker. The traffic flow would be really good that way, but the church right across the street probably would not appreciate it. So
Probably not.
that's the reason we decided that's not the right place for it. And then, so we'd have to get with the city of Murfreesboro if we're gonna be in the city, and then we'd have to meet all their regulations. The only big difference, correct me if I'm incorrect, they make us build a little prettier.
Landscaping.
Right.
Landscaping.
And then there's a house right in the middle that needs to be surplused and put out for bid. I've never been in the house, but somebody may want to buy that house and move it.
Well, we've had a couple of people already call there, you're gonna sell that, they like it, but, you know, we won't get much for it, but at least it might put us in a position where we wouldn't actually have to move it ourselves and demolish it, what have you.
And then there's some other outbuildings there that probably need to get with the fire department and sort to see if they want to do some practicing and actually wind up with those demolished and then get them out there.
Well, that's a barn structure here and a little storage area there.
Nobody liked my idea on the barn. The barn needs a little bit of love, but if you put a little love in the barn and put a property line fence around it, it's right behind the ambulance service. All the large animals that Paul's puts out there, the ambulance service can feed and water them.
Wait a minute now. Okay. So, yeah, there are any number of steps, that being one of them, but I don't think we can do anything. We need to have some discussions with determining who might be a good practical person to do this architectural work, and see if we could get some sort of preliminary proposal on somebody, bring that back to you people before we actually could even move forward with that. So we really can't do much till that happens. But we just sort of like a little bit of blessing on this, and then give Mac and Doug and Mike Hughes a little bit of flexibility to explore who we would get to do this work for us here on actually doing this if we go forward. But we have to start somewhere with some preliminary costs and some preliminary designs specifically here. But we're not asking you for any money tonight, period. Just more or less saying that this is a journey that we like you to bless us starting on, and then let Mac and the others come back with the specifics over in the next few months, probably.
Are you basically asking for us to bless this for some proposals to get this started?
Yeah, I mean,
As far as
sort of give-
requesting how much it's gonna cost? and-
So to give us
For the contract, you know.
your reasonable acceptance of this concept of what we're talking about doing, and on the office building and the vehicle shop building, bring back some sort of specific proposals somehow in the next 30 to 60 days or maybe more, from an architect or engineer that will actually help us get some preliminary costs together before we decide how much it's going to be and how much of this you're willing to fund and when.
Matt, would you be to the point that you could give two scenarios, two steps that you'd like to take and get it all done at the same time?
Mm-hmm.
You know, say, this is the priority, and then if we can do this, and we want to do this next, you know.
There's an advantage to having someone on the site other than just the contractors. When I was at one of the previous jobs, we built a new shop and office building and everything else. And of course, I was there every day looking at stuff. And I left that and went to another company. And about 6 months later, I got called, "Can you come pay us a visit?" Sure. And we were actually competitors at that point. So I went to see what they needed one afternoon, and where's our septic tank? And where's all the lines run? Well, I was there when they were put in, so I could show them because they weren't on a map anywhere. You know, so that would be one advantage to it. Another possibility is on the gas company in that talk about squaring up the property line, see what they want for that property. And they already have a rail spur. We would like to have a rail spur. So if we bought the property and had the spur, then we wouldn't need to build one.
Any of it, I mean, this is all, can be worked out. We don't want to have to say that business on this property down here is the priority, and we're gonna wait till that happens. So I think what we know we can do independent of this and do our very best while we're working on this to do that concurrently.
See, currently, solid waste should have more than enough fund balance to build our part.
So, and that's another whole discussion for you. One piece of this is solid waste. One piece of this potential is going to be ambulance. One piece is going to be the fuel depot, which supports everybody. One piece is county general on the county maintenance. So I don't know whether he doesn't have enough money to pay for all this. I don't know who's going to actually pay for this. How are we going to work this together in a partnership arrangement? Okay, that's yet to be determined. We're going to need a lot of discussion between our finance department and others.
And everybody wants to be the boss.
Well, no, it's going to be a county project.
It's gonna be a county project,
But
but you
Mac
got all these other
is not the
departments.
person in charge of all this, okay? He's a big proponent of it. Our vehicle maintenance is, which is county general, and the ambulance people, they're not gonna do anything yet, probably. That's probably in the future when that happens, but at least we have it there identified.
On the fuel depot, would we still, if we had that, would we still have contracts in other places of the county to?
Well, we wouldn't actually have to, but it might be wise to have something just for backup in case something happened here.
Well, I would just hate that everybody had to go over to this one location to get gas. How
But
would
right
that
now,
be?
it's not quite that bad, but it's almost. We've only got a few locations they can actually get refueled. One in Smyrna, and one in Murfreesboro, maybe a couple in Murfreesboro, I'm not sure. That needs further serious, discovery. All right, Mr. Chairman, that's about the end of our story, so I don't know if Becky's crafted a summary statement or not.
All I have is approve the concept plan on, for the Florence Road, Singer Road property as submitted, including the house, barn, and shed issues. That's all I have.
And go ahead and say, with the identification included in this discussion, phase 1 would be the office and vehicle shed for the solid waste department, and also include the vehicle shops for maintenance.
So these three properties, the office, the vehicle shed, and phase 1?
Yes,
Those are
ma'am.
the three.
Well, I think we should go ahead and include the architect.
And allow, because we're not approving an architect, allow discovery and between all of the parties, solid waste and planning and engineering, to just go out and evaluate potential architects or engineers that would be in a position to help us start this discovery.
Is the office maintenance, or what was the office?
This office
Office is
is
solid waste.
Solid waste.
Be your office?
Yeah, it's
Be
his-
your new office, like, okay.
Right. There will be an office area in that vehicle maintenance area of its own.
Then what would happen to the armory?
The armory will stay just like it is. We probably won't do anything with that garage underneath that armory. it probably shouldn't be used for that purpose.
There's been a little discussion about the possibility of having a radio shop. We have a lot of county radios. Putting a radio shop in that space.
Okay, any other addition to the motion?
Read the motion how it should be. Becky.
Okay. Approve the concept plan as submitted on the Florence Road, Singer Road property, including the house, barn, and shed issues, and identify as Phase 1 to include the solid waste office and vehicle shop for maintenance and
Vehicle shed. And also the additional structure for the vehicle maintenance.
I would make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Well, and allow discussion between solid waste planning and engineering to evaluate, and the architect and engineer to start the discussion.
All right.
Got
Does
a
that
motion?
cover everything you need to look at right now?
Second.
Got a second, motion and second, any other
I'll second.
discussion? If not, let's call the roll.
Commissioner Baum?
Yes.
Commissioner Cook?
Yes.
Commissioner Ely?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner McAdoo?
Yes.
Okay, y'all hang on here just a moment.
Okay.
Number 2, sale of northwest triangular portion, 0.7 acres of Florence Road property.
All right, so we're still on the same property. I don't know if Vic will manage to get this on there, but it's pretty small. I've got enough of these copies, so let's just let you have one of these, please. Whoops, excuse me. That's okay. Now, give y'all one down there. You tell us not to get one. All right. Now let's look. Let me get mine turned the right way here. Okay. I've got mine turned to the left. You can see Florence Road. Put that little tip at the end of Florence Road to the very left of the page. Okay. There you go. Now, do you see that elevation labeled 544 right in that little triangular corner there? That, you can see the green line. The green line is the sewer. And that sewer comes right through before it gets to that 544 and turns north, not northeast. And all of that area in that little triangle back there is sort of a, you can see those elevations, those contour lines are sloping down. So that's sort of a retention area. Is that right, Doug?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. Now, the person that owns this adjacent property, which is not in gray, but in the yellow, just to the south of that line, he wants, if you'll sort of draw a line, well, you can draw it wherever you want to, about just approximately through the 544 labeled contour line. That little triangle, they want that little triangle to add to their property. Now, that's going to be, we're not going to build on that property. We're not going to pass the sewer, so it doesn't really serve us any real purpose right now, but it does collect some of our water. Is that?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And Doug, you might explain to them how this will benefit him a bit as well.
Well, it gives him, the way that he's, his property, which is in the yellow right next to it.
Yeah, see, that says stormwater management area there.
But he's looking to develop that property. It's actually in the city, so he's looking to develop that property. It would allow him to square up his property a little bit more and would allow him a little bit more area for development. Plus, it would give him some area, additional area for detention and retention on the property. While that is a low area, and as you can see on the concept plan right underneath, that's where our stormwater management area is drawn in. That area can be shifted to the south just a little bit. I've been talking to Mike and Mayor Burgess about this, and none of us see any issue with having that carved off and just shifting the detention pond just a little bit. There's really no, as Mayor Burgess said, there's really no benefit for us having that little triangle right there. So it allows the neighboring property to have a little bit more developable property and a little bit more area for their detention, and then allows us to basically unload a little bit of land that we weren't going to use anyway and shift our detention pond down a little bit, and that's still going to suit our purposes just fine.
If you go towards Smyrna, turn left on Florence Road, cross the railroad track. As soon as you cross the track, that property to the left is adjacent to the property that we own. And it was owned by the city. It's a little outlier of what they have across the street. And when they got ready to sell it, they asked us if we wanted it. I told them no, because it's too narrow for us to do anything with it. It wouldn't help us any. So doing this won't hurt us any either.
What's this right here?
That's the
House.
house, that's the house
Yeah.
that needs to be
That's the
removed.
Yes, ma'am.
The church is it across the railroad
Church
tracks?
is over,
To the very right of your edge here.
Right in
See
here.
that little,
Down,
down toward the bottom?
Closest to you.
Right there,
Right there.
right there you go.
Okay. Well, I've seen all this flood. I mean, all
But
all
there's,
through here.
since, and there's, this is sort of a drainage area that they have fixed all the way down here. That's, so it comes down this way and crosses over here. So they, when they redid that road there, they did that, I believe, didn't they, Doug? I'm not sure when they
I
did it.
believe. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure.
They just recently done that road.
No, it's been,
No,
it's
that
been a
road's been
while,
on several years now.
a few years.
Doesn't seem like it's been more than
I know.
3 years.
Time goes by.
it's
But
not
they,
finished. It was done before I started the job, and I've been here 10 years and 6 days.
Oh, me. Well, I thought they had done something to that road since then, really.
no, you can see it's improved and widened down through there.
Oh, yeah, it was close.
And they did that storm drainage area through there then, I believe. Anyway, that's what it is. The person that wants this doesn't want to give any real money for this, but I told him we'd have to at least give something.
Fair market value.
Well, I don't know who's gonna tell us what the fair market value is for a drainage area that just holds water from time to time. But he's offered $1,000. So you can decide if that's enough to be a good neighbor or not.
How much is it? About half acre?
7 acres.
I don't know, that sort of computed, it's in the neighborhood of 0.7 tenths of
Yeah,
7
yeah,
tenths of an
it's
acre.
an acre.
So,
How much was it assessed for?
it's not been assessed,
Not much.
not that little
The
piece.
way they assess mine is not funny at all.
Okay.
Well, I would wait and let that architect look at it too.
Let who look at it?
The architect,
Architect.
yeah.
Okay, we can let him look at it and
Yeah.
see if it really is something we must keep,
Yeah.
because we must have it for whatever purpose we're gonna do with the rest of this stuff over here.
Let's put him off until we look at it.
Okay, I don't have a problem. We can let the record reflect that we've had this discussion, and at the moment in time, we don't see that in particular we need that piece of property, and it won't affect us, but, and an abundance of caution, the suggestion from the committee is for us to, when we have these discussions with an architect, get a little bit further along, we'll let him help us decide
Right.
if we can really dispose of it without harming us.
That's a prudent thing to do.
Yep.
Okay.
We don't need no motion on that.
No, you can just
Yeah.
I'd like for her to
Records
sort of
reflect.
codify a discussion that we've had. So the next group can remember that we've sort of discussed this.
Something else that may be in the future and may not. Florence Road is 3 lanes to Singer Road, 2 lanes to the railroad track, and it's 3 again. So the city, until they sold their little corner up there, they own both sides and we own the other side of that. So it may be in somebody's best interest to look and see if you're gonna finish that 3-lane section. And if you look at the right-of-ways on there, they shouldn't need any for Florence. Now, Singer, it wouldn't hurt if they widened it a little bit.
Especially if you got big trucks going in and out.
I wouldn't put our big trucks anywhere.
I know it. I mean, they,
But we still have a Nissan warehouse in that area.
Yes, it's on the opposite side of the track. Yeah, it's wider on that.
Yeah, it's wider on that end down there.
Yeah, from the track to Florence Road is actually a county road. If we get into city limits, I don't know how that gets.
All of that is gonna be an interesting discussion with you going forward here.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think we're through with Mr. Nolan and Mr. Demosi then. nothing else on here, we'd be happy for them to help us with some of these other
You want me
things.
to stay around for the annex to the point building?
Oh, yes, that was down, didn't go down far enough. Yep. You need to stay around for agenda item number 5. Okay,
You don't need me for anything else?
no.
Okay.
Now, you need to go ahead and take you have a final copy of that
I
already?
got this one.
That's all we,
I've got the one previous to this.
okay, you take, I got plenty, you take one of these,
I
'cause you,
just got one.
okay, take 2.
Take this one. Okay.
That one
Give
with
one to an
architect.
give whoever, let someone look at this.
All right, number 3.
Number 3,
Lease modification for probation services at 309 West Main Street.
okay. This, and you well know, we're leasing that property, 309 West Main Street, that's where misdemeanor probation is located. And basically, we've had that for well over a year now. We're on a month-to-month lease, more or less. Now, what the people that own that want us to consider, want you to consider, is they like to sell that building. They're not asking us that we want to buy it, but they say there's no lease period in our agreement with them, so they're having a hard time making anybody think that they got a piece of property they can be assured there's any lease time there. So if you look at item number 2, that's the only thing that's been changed in this whole thing here. It says from August 1st through July 30, 2020, which is a 2-year period. That's the term of the lease. The county may opt out of the lease by providing a 90-day written notice. So really and truly, on a rational basis, it doesn't bind us any more than we're bound right now, because we know full well, we'll know at least and more than 90 days when we're going to be out of that building. So we can give a 90-day notice and get out anytime. We're not even thinking about getting out yet until we go through at least 2 phases of refurbishing and renovating the judicial building, and then maybe even after that, we may have to do a little bit over in the health department, hopefully not. That would be the earliest we could even move the probation people over into the health department location. So this is just a courtesy to these people. I'm not sure it will help them sell the building any better than it is right now, but they've asked for this a couple of times, and I just told them I'd bring it to you and see what you thought. To me, it doesn't raise our liability, our exposure at all, because we're probably going to know at least 6 or more months before we need to get out. We could give a lot of notice.
But they won't basically kind of give them a little bit of selling point that they have a lease.
They do have a lease,
And-
but
okay.
whoever
Now-
reads that lease and says there's a 90-day out, they still would pretty much understand it.
Okay, now, playing what if they sell that? Are they gonna be able to kick us out? Or they're gonna have?
Whoever buys this will be, this lease is
probably
in
that
place through
contingency in there.
2020.
Yeah,
So you might have to say we have to get our work done before 2020, July the 30th.
I
Okay.
think whoever, of course, I'm not a businessman like that, but I think whoever would be involved in wanting to buy that would be willing to say, well, look, you know, I've got an income coming in for
Let 'em
2
stay
years
there
anyway, you know, so.
for a while. Yeah, I don't think they'd want to
pretty
buy
good
it out.
investment.
Anyway, that's a simple request that they've made.
Becky, draft a motion.
Okay.
You approve the lease agreement?
That's very simple. I will do that. I will make that motion.
Motion to approve the lease agreement.
But with notation.
necessary
With notation
modifications.
that it's simply extending the term until July 30th, 2020, with a lease option out of the lease anytime with a 90-day notice. I'd like to put that in a minute so somebody read this later, they'll know what we really did here.
I've got that in the discussion. Do you want that in the motion as well? Because that is in
Well,
the discussion.
as long as it's in the discussion, you've disclosed that that's what we're talking about. That's okay.
I just didn't want to overwork Becky.
Becky, can you draft my second?
I will. You're losing control.
I know it. She's drafted a whole page up here. Just working on the bill. Let's hold off on the drafts. Okay. motion and second on modification of the lease. That's what I'm
To
saying.
approve the lease
You
agreement as
approve, yeah.
presented.
Anybody want to hear the motion as written? Any further discussion? If not, call the roll.
Commissioner Baum?
Yes.
Commissioner Cook?
Yes.
Commissioner Ely?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner McAdoo?
Yes. Okay. Okay, PBA agreement for services to develop the construction plan for refurbishing the judicial building on the square.
Okay, you've already approved and we've already executed an agreement with Grisham and Smith for just the first phase of the architectural services, the design phase of that. So they're ready to start going on that. In fact, they have a meeting, they're going to schedule a meeting the first week in August, I think, with the departments that are going to be affected by this discovery process. But in any event, we talked about, and I think we got permission to at least talk to the PBA about would they manage this project for us like they did before with the Judicial Center. And this agreement we've crafted here is does just that. It gives over to the PBA. Now, PBA will have to agree to all this, but I think they will. They've said they certainly would like to help with this. It would give them the authority to move forward with using Grisham and Smith, and then selecting 2 other specific people to be on their team, you might say, the construction manager and the owner's representative. And they'll have to go through their normal processes to identify those 2 people. And through this initial design services phase, they can work together and they can come up with some reasonably, I guess you could say, in the ballpark, numbers on the cost of this effort that we're talking about. And through that discussion, they'll have to come back to the property management and the commission before they can really move forward with anything more than just this preliminary development of what we're going to do to those buildings, how much it's going to cost in some reasonable ballpark, and come back for, I guess, basically your ability to fund that. And we'll have to fund some additional money whenever that happens for another phase of the architectural services. Now, it says within this that once that kind of discussion takes place, you can see it says the Rutherford County Commission has authorized an expenditure not to exceed $66,700. That's the first piece that you've already allowed us to execute with Grisham and Smith for the purpose of hiring them for initial planning, schematic design, budget preparation and consultation, value engineering, documenting new and existing floor plans to renovate the old judicial building. But after that $66,700, it says, or as amended. So if they go through this initial design phase and come up with a number that the commission thinks is a reasonable number for us to appropriate, then you would have to then make some reasonable commitment to appropriate, let's say it's $3.7 million. That's sort of what they've estimated initially. If they were to meet that target and you were to say, we agree to fund this, then you would also you would amend the contract with the Grisham and Smith people to add to the actual development of construction plans and documentation so that we could actually then begin to take bids, etc. We would be taking bids through a working process with the owner's representative and the construction manager, which would be a contractor that's working with us to value engineering all of this to their best ability. But that's there. You'll notice there's a couple of committees that would be involved in this. The chairman and the members of this design review committee would be the chairman of the PBA or his designee, the county mayor or his designee, the county property management committee chairman or his designee, the construction manager, and the owner's rep. So that's the process. These people would be specifically involved in the day-to-day kind of discussion until you get this thing designed where you think it should be, until you think you've got it at a price that's acceptable. Then after that's done, you would have the construction oversight committee once the architect's contract is amended, and then they draw the actual drawings, and then the construction is actually begun. You got the same Construction Oversight Committee with the addition of one person, and which is the same way the Judicial Center worked. The County Building and Codes Director is added. So that's, the rest of this stuff back there is just normal stuff that's in the PBA agreement. Same thing we had with the previous PBA agreement. We haven't changed anything back there.
Any questions?
This really doesn't fine the county for any more money. It just puts the process in place where the PBA can start functioning, just to help get this project designed and identified a cost that we think is a reasonable number to put in a target so that they can go ahead and finish the actual drawings and make it happen. Every step of the way, any money changes, it'll be a property management budget / commission's responsibility to approve any of that before anything else can be done. The only thing they've got right now is $66,700 to do design work and value engineer, you might say, and come up with the actual reasonably preliminary kind of drawings and what that may cost.
Any discussion on it?
Well, I'm glad to see the PBA come back in on several things that we're doing.
We need to move on
And,
it.
and they have saved us money. I would like
Yeah,
to
they
see-
did a remarkable job on this judicial center.
They sure did. My hat's off to them.
Well, we need to move on it as quickly as possible,
Yeah.
just for trying to get an office space. together.
Approve the agreement for architecture and engineering services.
Okay.
All that.
Make it.
I hear a second to the motion.
I'll second.
Got a second. Any further discussion? Okay, call the roll.
This is roll call time.
Commissioner Baum?
Yes.
Commissioner Cook?
Yes.
Commissioner Ely?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner McAdoo?
Yes.
Okay.
Number 5.
Number 5, okay, I'm not gonna ask you for any official action right here. Here's what I wanna do, and Mr. DeMosi can come up here, Mr. Hughes has been involved here. Now, you've got, I made some copies, you got enough, I got enough for everybody to have their own copy. Okay. Ta-da.
I'll pass them out for you.
Whoop, I went too far back in some of my other documentation here.
I'll just pass them out for you.
Let me get to the back. There you go. Let's see.
And what he's passing out is referring to the sale of annex and corner building on the square.
Yes, sir. You got enough of there? Here we go. One more right here.
Trying to throw it at him, I thought.
Airmail it.
Okay. This little drawing right here. Now, this, Mr. Hughes and Mr. John Cortez, who is an engineer that works with us. What you see there, you've got something labeled TR1 and TR2. Well, TR2 is the old judicial building. TR1, you can see is, it's basically two structures there, but they're together now, is the, what we call the annex, the old bank building on the front and the what's called the old coin building on the back. Now, you have, and the commission has allowed us to surplus this property. We've taken it through property management and the actual purchasing committee. And the scenario that we adopted, 7A, says this property is to be surplused and potentially sold. So what we're talking about doing here, and this is just a start. And I want all of you to take this notice of public sale here that I have crafted with no other assistance, you might say. That would be what we would publish, or something like this, with modifications as whoever, I haven't had the attorney read it over this and see if we need to add stuff, but that needs to be done, of course. But I want each of you to sort of agree that we're on the right track here, even though this may need some specific things changed. And there are no dates in here. This is a complex kind of process. And you can see that, let me see what I've got here. don't know if I put the dates on. We would, when we put this out, notice of public sale, we're not going to give people just 2 weeks. We're probably going to give them a month or more before they have to respond to this, because I'm requiring in here that they, each bidder is required prior to the bid opening to visit and inspect the property. We don't want them to accept a bid unless they've been over there and done a substantial amount of due diligence to see if, with their own eyes and with their own people, if they really are serious about this process. And some of this is just saying what they must provide. The bidder must provide a narrative description of the possible usage for the refurbished renovated building or a new building if the structure is to be demolished. If neither renovation or new construction is planned, describe the planned use for the vacated. So I've just made it wide open where they can do what they want to. But look on this next page. The county reserves the right to reject any and all bids for whatever reason it wants to. If you don't like what they say they're going to do with it, it's the commission's right to address that. And it also gives us the privilege to iterate on this a bit with specific questions regarding the bid from anyone that we might get. So we needed this because we didn't have this. We've got some deeds, and we worked through 2 or 3 different deeds on these parcels here. And Mr. Cortez has made the deeds, and this little boundary description here, you might say, match the deed. So we think we've got an accurate thing, but we can't offer something for sale unless we can properly identify its meets and bounds, etc. So where you see I've got property description, that hadn't been fleshed out. That piece of paper somehow will have to be this little drawing here that we've got for the actual meets and bounds on that track number 1 would have to be put in words, and we might even attach this with it, of course. But so, and if we were to take these bids and if we accepted their cash offer, and this bid, they would have to agree to close this within 6 months of that acceptance of the bid by the county. And the bid must be accompanied with a bond or certificate of deposit of 10% of the bid amount. And they would have 90 days for any due diligence to confirm or deny the offer after acceptance by the county. And they would have 6 months to close it after that period ends. If they don't close it by that time, the bond would be forfeited to the county. So I'm saying there's a bit of legalese here and just conceptually what we really think we might want to do. And you may not be in a position yet, and I'm not going to ask you to even approve this language. I just guess we can report this as my attempt to draft a first attempt at this notice of public sale. And we do have the description of the property now that can be placed here.
Then thought maybe the auctioning it off. Had you looked at that scenario?
No, I haven't. I thought about that. I think this is of such complexity, and that building needs close inspection. We could auction it, but I think we really sort of need to know a little bit about what the people think they want to do with it. I think we need to be a little bit ahead of that process and not just allow it to be anything. I think we need the opportunity for the commission to determine from the bids we get if it's something they're comfortable with that they're going to do and they're going to put on the square, because it's going to impact everything up
Yeah,
here.
because it's sitting right beside us. I mean, it's gonna be our next door neighbor.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's that third big paragraph there is just my effort, plus that last sentence, for us to give us the ability to make our own basic choice on whether we think the people are capable, if they're experienced, and if they're going to do something that's in good context and good character with what we currently have.
Be good neighbors.
Be good neighbors. I think Rutherford County and Murfreesboro deserves that scrutiny. And I've told them it's being offered as is where is, without any guarantee or warranty. And so our attorney may have to have some more language here.
Like a used car.
But anyway, I just want Becky and the commission to have this in the record, and the next leadership team will have access to this, and you can move on with your next. See, we couldn't take bids and get it even started in the time frame that's left here in this term. So I've just done this to sort of document where we've been with all this discussion so somebody else can pick it up and go with it.
Housekeeping.
All right.
Sonia,
On the as-is, would we put in there that the furniture, the existing furniture and fixtures would stay so that we wouldn't have to be responsible for the removal of that?
No, we won't get that stuff out of there now,
Okay,
because we're gonna start that work on that judicial center, and that we can't move that stuff around. It's not as much over there as one may think. If everybody would agree that we can do what we want to with those metal filing cabinets, we can get about 80% of that stuff out of the building.
okay.
We don't want to move that stuff around any more than we need to, actually. And it's not, some of that has no value.
It has no value, it's been there so long, if we start moving it, it'll probably fall apart anyway. so-
No, some of that still, we got still a few pieces that,
Few pieces?
that we need to keep.
Well,
And we've got some, what do you call these shelving things, Sonia, that we still got some nice shelving over there that we may can keep some out to
Well,
use.
we-
I don't,
Right, we hope to leave that like on the 5th floor. They have one of those large filing systems that are really expensive with the cranks that we put in the new judicial, which I'm hoping that we keep for HR's purposes to keep for their medical, personnel files. And
so some of those things,
we may even want some of those cubicles and stuff for probation whenever they move. We might want
Yeah.
to consider that as well.
yeah, there are a couple of sets of cubicles over there. Anyway, there's a few things. I went over there a few days ago, but, okay.
that just for discussion, get in the minutes on
This is, get in the minutes that this is a preliminary draft of a notice for public sale, along with a survey and description of the meets and bounds of those tracks is available. And further discussion will need to be forthcoming soon.
Wonder what Murfreesboro would like to see go in there.
I don't know. They need some office space, maybe they want to buy it.
But they could buy, I'm talking about, I think, I'd rather see retail go in.
Hey, that's something for,
The buyer.
for you guys to start that discussion once you decide what you get from the bidders.
When will it be published as far as the bid sent out?
I'm gonna let the next term mayor decide when you want to send this. This is, the bids, you'll need to give at least 30 days notice before these people are gonna even bid, because they need to have some real time to evaluate, review this, see it. So I don't want to put the bid out, we could put the bid out, but I don't think we could take bids in probably till sometime September or after.
Okay.
we don't need to rush the process right now.
No. And I don't want to get in the middle of the process and leave it hanging out there, so.
Okay, any other discussion on it? I think that's just the information on it for our minutes. Is there any other business to come before the committee? Not, entertain a motion to adjourn.
At least we wouldn't fit.